First question, dear Venerable, the story you just been talking about, Maha Maudgalyayana and Ullambana, is very interesting. We trust that you are talking about offering to Sangha group could generate merit that saved sentient beings in the ghost realm. Could you kindly explain more details, the logic behind it? Yeah, it's a good question. The Buddha said in the Ullambana Sutra that the only way to save his mom, the Arhat's mom, Maudgalyayana, is to make offerings to the whole assembly of Sangha members from all directions, north, south, east, west, all directions, offer to the Sangha members, and that action would generate enough merits to save his mom. But how come not even the Buddha can save? How come not even the Arhat who has supernatural power could not save? What's the logic behind it that we can think about? Yeah, that's the logic behind it. The merits so obtained from offering to the Sangha members will be so abundant. The reason is like this. At the last day of the summer retreat, that's the confession date, all the Sangha members gather together, could be thousands of them, 1,250 or 20,000, thousands of them. They will gather together, do a confession at the last day, which is the 15th day of July according to the lunar calendar. They will do confession. They gather together. And if you offer to them, you are offering to future Buddhas, not just one Buddha. Because every one of this Sangha member is on their way to enlightenment. They are practicing in such a way that they are on their way to enlightenment. So assuming that the Buddha had a smaller group at one time, 1,250 at 1 year, for example, in the confession day, 1,250. So there's 1,250 probable Buddhas in the future. If there is one Sangha member who became a Buddha, immeasurable number of sentient beings would be saved. Imagine, in the history of mankind, we have one historical Buddha written in the history of mankind. It's not fake, it's not fictitious. It was written in the history of mankind that we had a Buddha called Sakyamuni Buddha. It's 2,600 years ago. And since 2,600 years ago, how many sentient beings, on listening to the Buddha's Dharma, the Buddha's teaching, became enlightened or became marching on to the spiritual path to be enlightened? Billions and billions of them. Billions and billions of them may have gone out from the prison planet to go to that nirvana. A prison planet contains billions and billions of people. So in terms of the magnitude, it's magnificent, more than just one Buddha. So the abundance of the merit is so huge. So that goes to another thinking, if we stop at this level, and think about from the perspective of the Sangha members. That's the merit so accumulated from offering to Sangha members of all directions because of the magnitude involved. If one of the members become a Buddha, billions and billions of sentient beings will listen to the Buddha's teaching and become saved. So according to the history of mankind, how many billions and billions of people on listening to the Buddha's teaching have extricated themselves from prison planet and being nirvana, released from all suffering? Billions and billions of them. The magnitude is so abundant. Okay, so logically, that's because that's the reason why the merits are so abundant. Next question. If Sāriputta was the head Sangha, where was Ānanda placed? Do we care? Say if Ānanda is the second place, we're happy. If Ānanda is the third place, we're not happy. Don't prioritize them. Sometimes prioritization of certain fame and reputation and importance would give you perverted ideas of power, of fame. Get away from that. Ānanda could be in the 3rd place, 4th place, 5th place, 5th place, 6th place. It's a practitioner of the Buddhist teaching. We don't seek position. Oh, I want to be 2nd place, I want to be 3rd place, I want to be 4th place. I want to be better than him. As the follower of the Buddhist teaching, you don't differentiate by that. You just practice, and how do people look at you is not from your side. It's not from people who are struggling for power side. If Ānanda in the 2nd place, would Ānanda be unhappy about the 2nd place and want to be in the 1st place? So it does not matter, does it? It does not matter where Ānanda would be placed. It matters only if are we getting on the spiritual path to get into the samsara? Are we being a bodhisattva, set ourselves to save sentient beings from suffering, render our compassion, not in where certain person was placed in the echelon of power, in the echelon of how to categorize people according to wisdom, according to importance. Let's don't do that. It's not necessary. The president of a society would not necessarily be more useful and more respectful than a member of the society. As a matter of fact, some members of the society, even though if they're not the president, they could be as respectable. They may even be more respectable than the president. So don't categorize, stereotype position, not necessary. More and more, I would like to, because our temple has been in Canada for 38 years now, and Buddhism has been quite new a teaching to the West. Maybe within the past 150 years, and it has been for hundreds of years in some places of the earth. So we slowly will introduce more and more the Buddhist practice. But be alert that sometimes we want to tailor to the needs and to the habits of the Western culture, that sometimes we relax certain rules as stipulated in the sutra. For example, sometimes if you just have a few drinks, during meditation, we won't say, okay, stopped it. But more and more, we should be a little strict. It's just like a Vinaya. If we allow everybody to do as he pleases, then it wouldn't be serious in your practice. I found that in our Sangha community too. If we don't have stern rules, if we don't have Vinaya, people tend to be very loose in observational morality standard. So we have to make sure that, for example, before we eat, we have to say our prayers. When we are eating, we have to contemplate the 5 contemplations that we have. There's a saying in the English language, spare the rod, spoil the child. The sterner teacher, the more serious teacher, would produce better students. The teacher is always on the loose. The teacher allows you to do whatever you want. As long as you come for class, that's not too well. I mean, you really have to be a little bit stern on the practice side. You have to be compassionate, but you have to be serious in what you're practicing. For example, this morning when I was chanting, Namo Tassa, when you were following, I can hear the sound that some people don't put their heart into it. They just follow the sound. You're not putting your heart into it. Put your compassion, put your heart into what you're chanting. Concentrate in every word. Focus in it as if you're really rendering out compassion. You're rendering out kindness. You're putting your mind into it. You want to march on that spiritual level. You don't want to waste your lifetime in food, in drinks, in party. You want to really to go on to that path, what that the sages have walked. You really have to put your mind to it in order to do well. I said you cannot annihilate objects of attention, but you can change your mind. Somebody utters something you dislike. You hate it. He yelled out to me with ugly words. I hated it. My hatred continue and continue and continue. I want to eliminate those words. Can you? Words have been uttered in the air. How could you eliminate them? Even if it's in recording, you cannot eliminate them. Why don't you change your own mind? You can't change external objects, but you can change your mind to accept the external object with compassion, with forgiveness, and let it go. That's the only way to deal with it. You cannot eliminate object, especially object of the past, event of the past. The past yelling and shouting is already gone. Are you going to bring the past yelling and shouting onto the present table and ponder and grieve on it? That's abstract. It's gone already. You're being abused by your dad, for example. That action is already gone. You won't be abused again. You don't allow to be abused again. But you always bring that memory of being abused onto the present and ponder on it and agonize on it. How pitiful. Let it go. There's no use bringing past memories onto the present table and agonize on it. You can learn from previous lessons, not to commit the same errors again. My dad did that to me. I don't want to do it to my children because I learned from past experience. But I don't obsess and hate past experiences because there's no use in bringing back the past and agonize on it. Throw it away. It's poisoned. Throw it away and live your present moment of purity and non-obsession.